Today we have the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Good to see you again. Thanks so much for doing this.
Good to be with you, Brian. Thank you.
Let's jump into a topic that I think most people are focused on right now, and that is the overturning of Roe. There are a lot of people in the US right now who are scared, defeated, and furious based on this decision of Dobbs. You've been especially vocal about this issue in particular. In the short term, I've heard solutions including opening abortion sites on federal lands, expanding access to abortion medication like mifepristone. What is the administration doing right now to protect abortion rights?
So, first of all, I couldn't agree with you more. I've been traveling the country and people are rightly, deeply concerned. They're angry and fearful because the United States Supreme Court, for the first time, took a constitutional right that was granted and guaranteed to women, took it from the women of America, from the people of America. And this is no small matter. And what this has meant is that these various states with these extremist so-called leaders are passing laws that are making it virtually impossible for a woman to have access to reproductive care, to abortion. They are criminalizing doctors. They're punishing women. There are states where there's no exception for rape or incest. And I'll tell you, a former prosecutor who specialized in child sexual assault, for example, it's immoral from my perspective to relegate a woman who has, or a girl or a child who has been subject to such violence and abuse, to require them to then go through a pregnancy that they don't want. So what do we need to do? Well, first we have to understand that the context we're existing in, we have three independent co-equal branches of government. The court has acted. Now Congress needs to act and put into law, like we say, codify Roe so that the protections are there in law. And also the executive branch must act, as we have and will do more. So the president, for example, has signed executive orders to guarantee protections for women as it relates to their constitutional right for interstate travel, right? So women, girls who need to leave the state where it's been criminalized or it is now illegal, giving them protection to be able to go to a state where they can get the medical care they need. We are also doing the work, and through the executive order from the president, to make sure that for early abortions by medication, that we actually are able to facilitate that. And let's be clear, there's a lot of disinformation out there. The FDA 20 years ago verified that it is safe and in terms of that medication for use by women and those who need it. So these are the things that we need to do. I'm very happy that yesterday the House of Representatives passed legislation that is putting into law protections for same-sex marriage and interracial marriage. But I think, Brian, it's really important to note that 157, by my count, 157 Republicans in the United States Supreme Court on the House, the United States Congress on the House side voted against this legislation. So that means we've got at least 157 elected members of the United States Congress who clearly are not supporting the integrity and the legality of same-sex marriages and interracial marriages. So we've got a fight in front of us. And as far as I'm concerned, we have to build up the strength of a movement that is grounded in the knowledge that this is about a fight for freedom and liberty and basic fundamental constitutional principles, that we have to build up the movement in a way that does the best of what we do, which is coalition build, knowing that the same people who are attacking a woman's ability to make decisions about her own body are the same people in many instances that are attacking voting rights, that are the same people in many instances that are attacking LGBTQ rights around the country. And so let's build up the coalition and do what we need to do to support the privacy rights of the American people as it relates to all of these issues.
I mean, look, you mentioned the three co-equal branches of government. I know that longer term, the answer is to vote to hold the House, expand our Senate majority by 2 seats so that Democrats can eliminate the filibuster.
111 days. I believe it's 111 days as of today that we are looking at the midterms, and it's about, sorry to interrupt you, Brian, but I just want to get this out. But 111 days. Okay, what do we have before us in 111 days? Elections that are local elections about who is the county prosecutor or the DA, right? For those states that are criminalizing this, it's going to be important to make sure that you elect, if you care about the issue, prosecutors and DAs and county prosecutors who will stand up for the constitutional rights of women and all people in their county and not criminalize providers, much less patients. It's about who is your Secretary of State in terms of the voting rights issue. It's about who is your governor who is signing off on these laws. We have governors from Florida to Texas and other states who are approaching this from an extremist position that is definitely about attacking the rights of women to make decisions about their own body. All these elections matter. And then we need a pro-choice Congress. And here's the thing, as it relates to the Senate, I served in the Senate before, you know that. We need to elect 2 more senators so that we can get the United States Congress, now the House has acted, on the Senate side to act to protect a woman's right to choose. That's what we need. And thankfully, President Biden has said he will not let the filibuster get in the way of that becoming law.
To that exact point, if we are able to expand our Senate majority and eliminate the filibuster and ultimately pass the Women's Health Protection Act, even if it is passed, it is painfully obvious that this Supreme Court under no circumstances will allow that law to stand through whatever tortured legal rationale they can come up with to justify it, which means that at the end of the day, so long as we have this court, the future of abortion rights is still going to be in peril. So in that instance, do you believe that the court should be expanded?
I'm going to disagree with you, although I agree with your general point, which is that we always have to be vigilant, knowing that every right that we have gained will not be permanent if we're not vigilant. So I agree with that point. But to put it in law, there may be litigation, but we will be in a much better position than to not do that. And, listen, women are getting pregnant every day in America. And this is a real issue, and we need to act with a sense of haste about what is at play, what is at stake, and codifying Roe will be an important moment in terms of putting back in place protections for the folks who are at risk right now because of what the court did in Dobbs just weeks ago.
More broadly, I guess, just in terms of the assault by the court, would you support court expansion just in the general sense as we see this court continue to, make its assault on the American people?
I think what we've got to do right now is deal with what we've got in front of us. And the reality is that we don't even have the votes in the United States Senate to codify Roe. And there is a way to impact that, which is to have a pro-choice Senate, which means we need to elect 2 more senators who are pro-choice to get that through. So we can have this discussion about, other aspects of this issue, but frankly, right now, I'm focused on what we have in front of us immediately in terms of the task at hand, in addition to what we need to do in the long term. And I agree with you, this is a part of a movement. I mean, the president has been clear that expansion of the court is not something that's on the table. So let's focus right now on what we need to do around winning this election with pro-choice people, and mostly Democrats, because the Republicans, for the most part, in many ways, in terms of the leaders of the party, have been unwilling to support this issue.
So let's switch gears to the January 6th committee. Millions of Americans have been watching these hearings where we've learned the extent to which Trump knew the truth about his claims of fraud and his stolen election claims, and yet peddled those lies anyway, incited an insurrection anyway, and even tried to march with knowingly armed insurrectionists to the U.S. Capitol. All eyes are obviously on the DOJ now. You were a prosecutor, you'd mentioned that before. If it was up to you to prosecute this case, would you? And do you think that there's particular danger in failing to indict Trump, given what we now know?
So as a former prosecutor, I would tell you, I'm not going to comment on somebody else's case, because I think it's really important that you talk about a case based on full knowledge of what the evidence is. And thankfully, this congressional process has been available to and transparent with the public so that we are in real time seeing what's happening. And I know there's more to come even this week. But let me say this. There is no question that that was an attack, a visceral attack on our democracy. There is no question that we have our democracy is on the ballot in terms of what's at stake right now, that there are extremists in our country that are willing to subvert the very foundations of our strength, which is our democracy, and we need to take it very seriously. There's no question about that.
I want to switch over to the issue of the economy and gas prices. Those are two issues plaguing the entire world right now. On those issues, if you've got a pulse, you'll hear Republicans blaming the White House for both of those. So can you explain what the White House has done to address high gas prices and inflation? And can you also explain what solutions have been proposed by Republicans?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the point that you started with, but let me just first, this is one of probably the highest priorities of our administration, which is bringing down these costs. And so, for example, we've released a million barrels of oil through the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We have seen in the last 30 days a drop in gas prices at about 50 cents per gallon. And we think that's a good sign because it is a real issue for the American people and working people in particular. So these are some of the things that we have done, including extending the child tax credit and also passing a tax cut so that families have up to $8,000 a year more in their pocket to pay the expenses of raising a child, such as school supplies, medication, food. But to your point about Republicans, so Brian, on the child tax credit, right, which brought down in the first year child poverty in America by 40%, not one Republican in the Senate voted in favor of it. On the tax cut, that's putting as much as $8,000 in the pockets of working parents to help pay for the expenses of raising a child, not one Republican voted in favor for it. We are right now, one of my big issues for a long time has been to work on the issue of maternal health, because we've got women in America who are dying at some of the highest rates in the world for pregnancy-related causes, right? So one of the things we want to do is support women, including those who have given birth in postpartum care. So we are extending Medicaid coverage, which had been only 2 months postpartum to 12 months postpartum, encouraging states to do that. Not one Republican voted in favor of that. So they give a lot of mouth to the issue in terms of, just rhetoric, but in terms of actual policies that we have promoted, we have examples of where no Republican has supported it. One of the greatest things that we can do as leaders, if we are leaders, is support working families, working parents in America. And consistently, we have seen a lack of support for the policies that actually make that real and therefore bring down costs, household costs, for working people.
I should note too that in a number of Republican-led states, those same politicians who are lecturing about how to protect life are also the ones with the worst maternal health outcomes, the worst infant mortality rates, in many cases in the Western world. So it's just, ironic that those are the same people.
If I may, to your point, the other step that we are going to continue to fight for is, for example, saying childcare should be affordable, and for working families, they shouldn't pay more than 7% of their income in childcare. We're trying to get this Republican support for that. Haven't gotten that yet in a way that we can actually see it through. Same for paid family leave. During the pandemic, that became quite clear that if people have to choose between going to work sick or not going to work and can't put food on the table, well, they're going to choose to actually make sure they put food on the table, right? And that means going to work sick as opposed to being able to stay home and know that they don't have to compromise paying their rent or feeding their kids.
So let's finish off with this. We are inching closer and closer to midterms. You alluded to it just a few minutes earlier. Polling has come out recently showing waning support from young people who were critical to this administration's victory in 2020. How does the White House plan on winning that key demographic back?
Well, you can look at, for example, some of the big issues affecting young people right now. Why don't we start with where this conversation started, on the issue of Roe, right? And the Dobbs decision, what it means in terms of choice to make decisions about whether you're going to start a family, when you're going to start a family. Young women right now are making decisions about if they are college bound, where they might go to college and which state, depending on whether that state is allowing them to have autonomy over their own bodies. There are young women in America right now who are entering the workforce who are determining what state they should live in or leave because they may be punished or their healthcare provider may be criminalized because of what's happening. This directly affects young women and the people in their friend network and the people they know, which are of all genders, right, are being affected by this decision. And in particular, those who are in the stage of life where they're considering and making choices about when and whether they will have a family. You look at the issue of the climate crisis, you know, my home state of California, but you look around the country right now and look at Europe, the climate crisis is so real. And the decisions being made now, and in particular by extremist leaders standing in the way of meaningful action on the climate crisis, will have a profound impact on the young people of America and the world. By 2030, which are some of our deadlines and timelines, if we don't see serious action, we are looking at a moment where we can't turn back the clock. Right? These are the things that are at stake. The issues that are at stake are voting rights, where, by the way, from the same states, again, where you're seeing restrictions on voting rights, you're seeing restrictions on the right of a woman to choose. So these are issues that impact young people because, as we all know, your right to vote and the action of voting unlocks all the other rights, including same-sex marriage, including whether we're going to stand up against a law that says don't say gay, basically restricting kindergarten through third grade teachers in Florida to be able to love openly and teach what they believe is important for people to understand. All these things are on the ballot, and all these things are at stake right now in America. And I can't think of a population, frankly, that has more at stake than younger Americans in terms of this trajectory for our country and, by extension, our world. I traveled the world as vice president. I'm told I've talked with directly and met with a total of probably 80 prime ministers and presidents and a couple of kings. And America holds ourselves out to be a model for the world. And on that basis, we can then walk in a room and talk about the importance of respecting human rights and other things. But they're watching us around the world. And when our highest court takes a constitutional right from the women of America, we've got so much at stake that is about the people who are directly impacted, but also our standing in the world. That affects everybody in our country, regardless of their age. But if you want to talk about trajectory, where this is all headed, in particular, it will have a long-term impact on younger Americans right now.
Vice President Kamala Harris, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Brian. Thank you.